Sometimes in life you are confronted to people who don't appreciate you can think for yourself. And sometimes they might try to force you to think in a way that is not beneficial for you at all. And when somebody is purely toxic and demonic in your life, the answer is pretty easy. It is just get rid of them, don't talk to them anymore, don't see them anymore. But when it gets trickier is when the person is somehow still bringing some value into your life, some positive value or benefit into your life. In those cases, it might be really complicated to confront them without losing the relationship. And that is exactly what we want to explain in this video. Since what you say or what you are going to have to say to that person may hurt their belief system, their values, their ego, their whatever, and the relationship overall, we first need to evaluate what is your relationship with that person and how the outcome of the potential conversation with that person can affect your relationship and as a result your life if it ends up well or not well at all. As Naval Ravikant said, the first rule in handling conflict is don't hang out around people who constantly engage in conflict. So that is a broader perspective before getting into building a rapport and maintaining it with those people. It is how is that relationship serving you so far? Has it been serving you so far? How is it still serving you or not? And if you were to end that relationship once and for all, what kind of outcomes or repercussions would there be in your life? But pretending or at least hoping this is still something at least partially positive for you and you do want to maintain that relationship because it is still something that benefits your life in some way, the first step right now is to better define your own position or your own thinking process about the conflict at hand or about the topic that initiated the conflict with that person. Basically, I like to say, and I kept saying that in therapy for years, when people in a relationship came to complain about their partner, for example, that every conflict or every romantic relationship, but same for any kind of relationship, any romantic relationship is all about communication. Everyone has heard that at some point. But to me, it is not communication with the other person. That is just the end of the process. It is first and foremost communication with yourself, with your own feelings. What exactly are you feeling about that person, about the topic of the conversation? What are you feeling deep down about your thoughts related with ending the relationship or maybe making it more positive? But what exactly are you thinking about it? And can you clarify what you want out of this situation? Quite often we just put our ego on the line and puke some garbage of insults or wounds that get out and have no place, no room to stay in that conversation. But we just project a ton of stuff on somebody who may not even be the cause of our suffering. So first of all, we want to clarify what exactly do I want to say to that person. If it is not clear for you, it is not going to be clear for them. And on top of that, they might project stuff on you too. So that might be a whole mess of intoxicated suffering, words that lead nowhere. Just figure out first what is it that you really want to say to that person. And to that extent, the three questions I like to ask myself, or the things I found the most useful, are defining what do you want to say, why do you want to say that, or like why did you start feeling that way with that person, and third, how did I come to that conclusion? So whatever I want to say, whatever is my opinion, whatever is the thing I would like to communicate to that person, how did I come to the conclusion that I had to say that? What were the triggers that made me realize that I had to speak out? If I can't clearly communicate that, the person might just get an incomplete message from me. Therefore, if I track back in my own mind which feeling or which event or which problem led me to want to say this or that, then I can communicate and explain to that person with so much more brightness in my communication, with so much more elegance, such better points that this person will just de-escalate the conflict right away, because I won't come projecting things. I will come with a mature reasoning about what is it that I have suffered with, related with that person eventually, and what kind of pain do I want to communicate about specifically. Then obviously you adapt the way you communicate it based on the person, but at least with you it has to be clear with yourself first before you try to explain it to somebody else. The second step are the 3 words promised to you on the thumbnail of that video, the 3 words to de-escalate the conflict, which are none other than I understand you. That may seem oversimplified, but how many times in the conflicts you've had in the last 5 years have you actually taken the time to say to the person, I understand you? Even if that is not the case, and quite often in me it was not the case, I didn't understand like some ex-girlfriend, but still I took the time to say, I understand how you feel, I understand what you mean, and what I would like to tell you is, by first enumerating the fact that you understand that person, you understand what they have been suffering with, at least it is decreasing their level of anger or their wounded ego in the conversation, and from there you can have a productive conversation instead of a childish soup of arguments that are just leading nowhere. You can get into a productive communication. So I understand you, and my opinion is blah blah whatever I say, or I understand you and what I would like to add to this, or I understand you and the reason I think differently than you is. And there you use what you used at what you elaborated on the first step. What were the initial things you wanted to communicate? Once you have clarified this in your mind, you say to that person, I understand your point, I see what you mean, and my opinion about this conflict or about this topic we are discussing is different than yours because. And then you complete with all the things you elaborated in yourself. I don't like what this person did to me because this, because that. And then you wait for their response. That way we can initiate at least an adult conversation, which is something less and less common these days, especially with social media. But you can initiate something where 2 adults are communicating, not something where 2 children are just trying to hit each other with a toy. And the third step, to put an end to the conversation, or at least to make it move forward, instead of just looping in circles on the same wounds, the same feelings of being hurt. Once you can get past that, how to accelerate that to the end, you point out to negative outcomes that will happen if the person does not change their mind or do not adapt their behavior. At first, you may obviously concede anything you may have done wrong. That's also one language pattern I used quite a lot in relationships. Like, I know I fucked it up here, I know I did something wrong there, and now I would like to tell you that if you don't change that behavior, I'm gonna leave and you won't see me again. That was a threat, and I was like half serious when saying that, but when you have first acknowledged something you have done wrong and you said, I understand you, blah, 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 even when that is not completely the case, then put a bit of acting into your presentation, then you can point out to a negative scenario that will arise if that person does not change their behavior or thinking process in your presence. At some point, you do get a reputation when you do that, because people start treating you with much more respect when they notice, nah, you're just not the kind of puppet they can manipulate whenever they want. You still have your own feelings, your own desires, and when those are not respected, you're gonna show it, and that's not gonna be enjoyable for them. Trust me. As a simple example, I have some friends, like a male friend of mine with his girlfriend. They wanted to get married, basically. They were planning maybe getting married, and they said maybe someday once we have accomplished this in our lives, whatever. And one time, without getting into the details, she got some trouble in her life, but she was projecting all of her trouble onto him, and he was becoming like the emotional sponge for all of her bad feelings. Instead of consulting a psychologist, a therapist or anything, no, she was just using him to unload all of her anger, sadness, whatever was going on. At some point, after a weekend trip with only me and him somewhere, when we came back, he was refreshed, he was much more relieved from all the things he was dealing with at home. And when he came back, she had the same behavior again with him. And this time he said, "You see, when you act like this, I just don't want to get married with you. I don't want any marriage." That was sincere. As I said, elaborating with yourself, what are you really feeling? Quite often we don't allow ourselves to say what we feel because we have so much guilt about feeling what we feel that we don't even accept it with ourselves. Once it is cleared out and the weekend trip had allowed him to process his feelings and realize that if she was going on like this, he didn't even want to maintain the relationship with her. When he said that, she had such a massive shock, such a massive interruption that she right away booked a session with a psychologist. She kept the psychologist like seeing her twice a month for 1 year. It got better. She could relieve all the things that she was dealing with her therapist. And then it was going well. Then finally, and he told me, it was crazy because he told me after that weekend trip with you, Matteo, like everything went well again. But it was after he told her, if you keep going on like this, I just don't want to marry you anymore. That's shock for a woman who wants to get married. That's a pretty huge shock from the man she loves. And from there, at least, yes, she understood her behavior at that point had been toxic. That is when she started seeking help because she needed help, but she needed help from somebody else than her boyfriend. So she got help and then everything got better. Sometimes with people you need to point out to dramatic outcomes and put some threat in the conversation coming only from your sincere feelings. Don't try to lie about anything, especially less in personal relationships. But once you have clarified what you feel, then you can enumerate it clearly by pointing out to the negative outcomes that will arise if nothing is changing. Unfortunately, human beings are quite often more motivated by pain, by escaping pain, than by seeking pleasure. So when you paint in their mind a terrible outcome from the future that may arise if they don't change their behavior with you, that will quite often, unfortunately, motivate them more than if you just remain silent, passive, and let them do and say everything they want with you. And this made me think that long ago I had produced a course on conversational hypnosis, and I had made an entire module on rapport, on building rapport and maintaining rapport, but in every way, shape or form, professionally, personally, in every type of relationship and encounter and situation. And that course is something that is no longer available because it was almost the first one I made. I didn't think it was such a great one because the ones I made after were better. All of that to say that the module on rapport building is available for free for a limited time only down below in the description. If you want to access that, there is still quite a lot of content in that module alone on building rapport. If you want to check it, be my guest, it is down below, still accessible for now at least, maybe not anymore by the time you watch this video, but you can see that right now it will teach you how to develop more acuity in your communication whenever you want to get somebody to trust you, to get somebody to validate your importance as an individual, because sometimes people just try to shit on you and they don't realize you matter too, not just them. So how to maintain rapport in conflicting situations or with problematic people, you will find all of that down below. And with that in mind, thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you soon in the next video, and keep practicing. I am always here to help you.